There's a secret Athens tried to bury beneath victory songs and blinding white marble. A secret that reeks of sea salt, iron blood, and sobs swallowed before they can become sound. Picture a ship cutting into the harbor, and on its deck stand the city's finest boys and girls, cloaks clean as if they're heading to a festival. The crowd presses in, not to celebrate, but to witness a ritual that has become normal.
We sail now.
Every 9 years, Athens gives its children to something across the sea. They call it tribute. They call it peace. But it is sacrifice stamped and legalized by power. And the sharpest question is this: who is the real monster here? The Minotaur, or Athens itself? The radiant city that agreed to turn its youth into offerings in exchange for order? Before the Labyrinth, before the roar inside stone, before horns scored the dark, it began on Cretan island the Aegean holds like a crown. Under King Minos, Crete was not merely a kingdom. It was an engine of control. Cretan ships moved past the islands like glittering blades, carrying laws, taxes, and promises of protection. Minos did not rule by mercy. He ruled by certainty. Whoever sails through my sea bows to my sea. And to keep that power unquestioned, he needed a sign from the gods' proof that the throne was sanctioned. So Minos called to Poseidon, lord of the deep. From foam and thunderlight emerged a white bull, so flawless it seemed the moon had learned flesh. It was not simply an animal. It was a declaration. Minos was meant to sacrifice it to prove devotion, to seal the pact. But power has a dreadful temptation. Once a man holds a divine symbol, he starts believing he deserves to keep it. Minos hid the white bull and offered another in its place. A small substitution, yet it was the first crack in the wall of order. For gods, a crack is enough for the sea to flood in. Poseidon did not need lightning. He only dropped a curse like a stone into a well. The curse found Pasiphae, Minos' queen. In a desire that no longer belonged to human boundaries, she yearned for the white bull. It was lust without limits, as if the world's rules had flipped. And in that chaos, Pasiphae turned to Daedalus, the master of nature, who could turn wood and bronze into wings, and ideas into bodies. He built a hollow cow, so precise it could fool the eyes of gods, so the queen could hide inside it. Genius serving madness. Intelligence forging what intelligence should have refused. And then the Minotaur was born half man, half bull, a living emblem of royal shame and divine revenge. It wasn't merely a monster. It was the product of choices. Minos' deception, Pasiphae's cursed desire, and Daedalus' hands turning the impossible into real. Imagine its first cry in the palace. Not an infant's wail, but a strangled bellow trapped in the wrong shape. They did not see a child. They saw a stain, a breathing humiliation. Minos could not kill it like a beast. It was royal blood. But he could not let it walk free. So the Labyrinth came into being not as a wonder first, but as a prison built by genius. Daedalus shaped it like a nightmare in stone. Corridors that repeat like obsession. Turns that answer nothing. Walls so tall, even screens return and die. The Labyrinth was not only to contain the Minotaur, it was to contain the truth. As long as the monster stayed underground, Minos could remain above ground and wear the mask of order. But no prison holds only one captive. A labyrinth also traps its builders and guards. And the Minotaur's hunger, the hunger of a creature born wrong and then abandoned, became a problem. Minos could not hide forever. A man-eating beast sounds like a tale told to frighten children. Yet if you are king of a sea empire, what do you do when your prison needs food, so your secret doesn't explode? You turn it into ritual. You dress cruelty in legality. And you find your supply in a place that cannot fight back. That is how Athens enters the story, not as hero, but as prey. Some versions say Minos' son Andronicus came to Athens, won his contests, and was killed out of envy. Others whisper politics, conspiracy. accident. But the result is the same. Minos sails with warships and turns grief into pretext, power into a blade at the throat. Athens bends, not because it is cowardly, but because in the world of city-states, one moment of weakness can cost a generation. And the tribute is set, 7 boys, 7 girls. The number sounds poetic. Don't let the rhythm trick you. Imagine their households. A mother counting her child's last meals. A father forcing himself to look into his child's eyes without breaking. The brightest city in Greece, the city of reason, democracy, dignity, agrees to send its best youth into a prison on Crete to be torn apart in the dark. Here is the brutal truth the myth often softens. The Minotaur isn't only a monster in a maze. It is the price Athens pays to survive an island empire. Why would Athens accept it? Because this is how power manufactures obedience. It needs a monster. When the monster is out there, people accept injustice in here. Athens can help itself. We are victims. We are forced. The people can hate Crete and still cling to the stability their leaders promise. And Minos can claim, I keep the monster contained, but you will pay, as if he is doing the world a necessary service. The Labyrinth is not only architecture, it is a factory of fear turned into government. Within that shadow, Theseus arrives. And don't see him only as a sword arm. Theseus is a spark in a city trained to live under tribute. Son of Aegeus, king of Athens, some tales also give him Poseidon's blood. He grows up on stories of honor and humiliation, of youth sent away and never returned. A generation cut into offerings. When the next tribute is chosen, Theseus does not stand aside. He steps forward because he understands. To break a cycle, someone must go to the bottom of it. The ship leaves Athens under black sails, the color of grief announced in advance. Aegeus watches, his heart hollow. There is a pact. If Theseus wins, the ship returns with white sails. If he fails, black sails will write the ending. The wind over the Aegean sounds like gods whispering.
Place those
and
jars
inside
with
the
the others.
youths,
We have 50
perhaps
already.
there is an even worse
The count
sound.
matches them.
The silence of people who know they might die without anyone hearing them. Crete receives them with the cold efficiency of an empire. Minos' palace is not simply a home. It is a symbol of organized dominance, columns, wide courts, guards, ritual. Everything says, this place commands and receives. And there, Ariadne, Minos' daughter, sees Theseus. Some say Aphrodite struck her with love. Others say she was a girl in a golden cage, starving to break it. Either way, Ariadne becomes fate's hinge. Because to defeat a labyrinth, strength is not enough. You need a way out. You need light where light cannot live. Ariadne gives Theseus a thread, a small thing yet stronger than any blade against a system designed to make you lost. Theseus ties it at the entrance. Each step into the maze unreels the thread like a vow. The dark will not erase my path. Here the myth
Check the
becomes
alignment on
frighteningly
screen 3,
modern.
please.
When you
Alignment
face a
is
nightmare,
confirmed at 5
what
degrees.
saves you is not always power. Sometimes it is something simple, a method, a rule, a map, a strand of reason. Theseus enters the labyrinth. The air is cold and wet, tasting of moss and stone. Footsteps echo and vanish, as if the maze itself listens. The walls do not only block routes, they poison certainty. Left or right looks the same. Corridor after corridor repeats until your mind starts to break. The labyrinth doesn't just trick the eyes, it fractures the spirit. It makes you alone, so fear can swell into a second creature inside you. Then comes the roar, not a field animal's bellow, but a sound compressed by stone, thunder beneath the earth. The Minotaur appears not as a demon, but as a store with horns. Muscles like tables. A bull's head and eyes that might hold rage and grief at once. It charges like something starved not only of meat, but of belonging. In that moment, Theseus fights more than a beast. He fights what created it. The battle is instinct against will. In the narrow passages, the Minotaur's power is terrifying. But Theseus has what it does not: purpose and an exit. When Theseus kills the Minotaur, the myth calls it glory. But look deeper. Who is free? Athens, yes. The sacrifice, too late. And perhaps the Minotaur itself, the creature born to carry other people's sins. Theseus follows the thread back. This image matters. He does not escape by love. He leaves by the path he deliberately marked. Victory over the maze, not just the monster. They flee Crete with Ariadne, but Greek myth rarely grants clean endings. Ariadne is abandoned on Naxos, in some versions, later claimed by Dionysus. Now, step back from the story and lift the torch. The Labyrinth is more than stone. It is the shape of a power system, built to keep people disoriented. Minos uses it to hide royal wrongdoing, then turns it into a weapon against others. This mechanism is modern. Create a threat, then sell security through fear. When a society believes a monster waits outside, it will surrender children, freedom, dignity, anything just to feel protected. And the Minotaur is more than a beast. It is the child of authority and deceit. A living secret a throne refuses to face. Monsters, across cultures, often represent what a society exiles: the unwanted child, the outcast, the taboo. Greek myth takes a harsher step. It turns the exile into a punishment machine for everyone else. The Minotaur becomes death, yet it never chose that role. It was locked away, starved, made into an instrument. From this angle, the myth is not only slay the monster, but end the system that manufactures monsters. Athens, too, the celebrated cradle of civilization, wears another face here. It did not create the Minotaur, but it accepted the sacrifice economy. Myth becomes a mirror. Even the proudest civilization can build stability on the suffering of the young, the weak, the selected few. It asks the uncomfortable question: when a society says this is necessary, who pays, and how long can that payment continue before Theseus rises? Ariadne's thread is the myth's quiet genius. It is knowledge, method, memory, a map. In real life, when we enter labyrinths of information, propaganda, bureaucracy, or algorithmic loops, what saves us is often not brute strength, but a thread: critical thinking, verified truth, moral principle, or a trusted guide. You can see labyrinths everywhere systems designed, so you keep circling without exit. Paperwork mazes, death spirals, feeds that trap you in the same content. Minos' maze is an ancient version of a modern nightmare, being stuck in something built so you can't leave. Theseus, stripped of aura, is the one who refuses the agreement of silence. But his tragedy reminds us, breaking a system doesn't guarantee happiness. Consequences remain. Loss remains. Even the hero can slip exhaustion, confusion, a missed responsibility, and the cost can be irreversible. The Forgotten Sail is not just plot, it is a warning. And there is one more brooding layer. The Minotaur exists because everyone benefits from its existence. Minos keeps authority and hides shame. Athens keeps a clear external enemy. The people keep a story that explains fear without forcing them to confront political choices. Daedalus keeps living by his craft, even though his craft helped build the nightmare. In the real world, social monsters persist the same way because someone profits, someone keeps power, someone preserves convenience by pretending not to know. Labyrinths do not happen by accident. They are built. So what is Athens' monstrous secret? Not only tribute. The deeper secret is compromise. A city that speaks of virtue, yet sends its children to die. A society that condemns violence, yet survives by exporting violence elsewhere. Civilization sometimes stands on foundations where darkness is pushed below and renamed so people can sleep. The Minotaur is the body. The labyrinth is the structure. The true horror is the mechanism that makes it work. To end, Imagine the labyrinth after the Minotaur dies. The corridors remain. The walls still stand. The system does not collapse the moment the beast falls, because the labyrinth is habit, power, and fear's architecture. New labyrinths will be built in new forms. New Minotaurs will be born not from Poseidon's curse, but from lies, concealment, and legalized indifference. Yet there is hope thin, stubborn inside the thread. There is always a way to mark your path. There is always an exit if you dare to face the dark and refuse to let it erase your footprints. And if one day you feel yourself walking inside a maze spun by fear, by rules you can't understand, by stories designed to keep you quiet, remember Theseus in the dark, not as a perfect statue, but as a human being holding a small thread, trembling and still moving forward. Because sometimes the most heroic act is not killing the monster. It is entering the place you are told to forget, dragging the truth into daylight, and saying the simplest, most brutal line of all: the monster existed because we allowed it.